Hi, it's Gadget UK here again. As you can see, this time I'm looking at my 120 in 1. Doing similar remedial work to this that I did to the 138 in 1. Looking at this board now, it's amazing things I didn't spot first time around, you know, the lack of these bypass caps again. I think these are the same manufacturer as the 138 in 1, so it's no surprise that you can see the same sort of things happening here. You can see this is the one that I previously removed the diodes, and I got a voltage regulator. Now there's no spot on here for this, so when I did this one, I'll see if I can show you this without damaging the work. I mounted it underneath there, used a bit of heat shrink to protect the wires, and just mounted it on the underneath there where the diodes go. But there's plenty of places for bypass caps on this. And the other interesting thing, same place, 221, 220 ohm resistor again. So we're swapping that out. You might need that if you've got the diodes. I don't know how, because it's going across the supply. It's going from VCC, 3.3 volt line, to ground. So I can't see what benefit that provides at all. Please, if you know in the comments, please let me know. I can't see, you know, how that would do anything. Yeah, I don't know. Please let me know if you know how that's working or what that might be doing. I could understand if it was from the 3.3 line to the chip, you know, alright, you're going to limit some current there, but that's not what's happening. This, you know, one side of this is 3.3 volt line, the other side is ground, so I don't know, that's weird, I don't get it. I could be missing something blatantly obvious, but I'm not an electronic expert here, so my knowledge is limited. So the other thing you'll notice here, this board is lacking positions for bypass caps. Now we've got one here, which I will be populating, which it's not that close to the FPGA, but it's as near as I'm going to get, I think. And there's obviously, you know, positions here for the character ones. It's interesting. What they seem to do is they have one for every pair, so even that's not very efficient really. There should be one nearer these bottom row of chips, but there isn't. But I'll certainly put one there as well, and I'll do the same as I did the 138 in 1, and I'll do a link from here, from these three. Sometimes they're soldered together, these 3 pins, but they're always connected together because those are the VCC 3.3 volt line in for these MV prom chips. So I'll put another 100 nanofarad cap from the ground to that 3.3 volt rail there. I'm going to do the same with the S1. I'm going to go back to 138 in 1 and do that on there as well. It doesn't need doing, the 138 in 1's working fine, but I'm going to do it anyway because it just stands to reason it should have one. It's surprising it's not really, it doesn't have one. And I'll also get the reservoir cap. I'll use the JTAG connector just because it's convenient. I know you can see the track alignment is exactly the same as the 138 in 1. You've got 3.3 volt there, and then ground is pin 2, so it's really easy to stick a cap in there, and that will act as a reservoir cap for this board. Something like 220 microfarad, maybe 470. Should be good, I think. This is just a quick update of where I'm at with these multicarts for the neo-geo. It's been a period of time since I did the last part of this video, the bits you've just seen. I've been looking at this over a few weeks here and there, doing various things, including, well, I'll just describe some of the things. I've had 5 volt pull-up resistors on the PCM data bus, 16 of those pins I think, if memory serves. And I also had 5 volt pull downs as well. Before I did that, I actually looked up the component part there, and it's a CPLD that's on these. It's not an FPGA, and they are 5 volt tolerant on the I/O pins, which makes sense because the data bus is actually, it's kind of multiplex. It's an address bus as well at various points in time, and that is being driven by the MVS, which will be outputting 5 volt TTL logic levels anyway. So it stands to reason that data bus would, you know, if it's been used part of the time there as an address bus and it's got 5 volt TTL logic on it as is, the way it's designed, then it stands to reason that when it's working in data bus mode, it would be just the same. It's an output pin rather than an input pin, but it's anyway, and the datasheet, like I say, supports that anyway. That made no difference whatsoever with 5 volt pull downs, and then tried that didn't make a difference. Then 5 volt pull ups, and that made no difference. So it's not that the logic levels not sufficient there, and you don't need like level shifters or something. That's not going to solve the problem. But I've narrowed this down to a couple of different games, and I'll show you. This is Strikers 1945 Plus. So just have a listen to this. I'll just reset it. So hopefully you heard that there. The PCM stuff just goes crazy, volume level. And it seems to be the volume level, not like distortion. I'll start that again. And it's not always in the same time, the same place, the same point. So it was okay then. So it's not the VROM. There we go. Start it again. It's okay. Start it again. So, I don't know, you tell me what is going on there. How can it be okay 1 minute and then not the next? If I was to guess, I would say we're getting some parasitic capacitance building up. Hence why you can't get it to repeat every single time. I'm pretty sure that's what's going on here. Some of the traces are too close on the board. There's no decoupling or bypass caps rather, and it's the fact that the traces are running too close, and it's the impedance. I think that's what's going on. Why it's only affecting some games and not others? I'm speculating here. I'm not an expert in this area. It's only what I know and what I've read and what I've learned over the years. And I'm speculating that we have got a parasitic capacitance problem going on here. Traces running too close. And it depends on what is hitting those traces, what's hitting those data lines and the associated traces that are next to the data lines that causes this problem. So if you've got really high high frequency hitting the data bus, the PCM data bus there, a hell of a lot, maybe it's toggling a hell of a lot between the address and the data bus, and that parasitic capacitance is building up. That's what I'm thinking. So certain games that really hammer the PCM bus in that way, or even associated buses that are the ones something that's nearby that's causing this, this is why I think it's only affecting certain games. But what is interesting, I've just had, I'll just bring the thing down here. I've just had my 161 in one, same game, exact same game, and it's flawless, absolutely flawless. And this isn't just the one cart, I've got two 120 in one carts. I've just had another 120 in one cart there, it's exactly the same. I've got a 138 in one cart, that's exactly the same. Another 138 in one cart, that's exactly the same. On the same games, always the same games, always random in nature, never consistent. So it's a bit of a, like I say, I've got some theories. I'm not really sure. My problem is with my scope. What I really need is a scope that will record, for X number of seconds, so I can start monitoring, get it to glitch, and then look back and see exactly what's going on. And we're getting some shit, a noise spike that's not, that shouldn't be there. I can't do that with my scope. It's absolutely impossible to do it because it's analog. I can just see what's there and that's it. There's no capture, is what I'm trying to get at. But I can't help but wonder if, I got some more feedback on this and someone more experienced looks at this with the right equipment. I think we could nail this. I think we could work out what revision to make to this board, and I suspect it probably needs bypass cap, something like a 47 picofarad or something on a trace somewhere coming in or out of the CPLD where we're getting that capacitive, capacitance between the traces. And I don't even know whether that would solve it. Would that solve it? I don't know whether it would. I don't know enough about this particular subject. Done a little bit of searching on the net, and it's suggesting that it's the board layout that causes these problems, and you're kind of knackered. The principles around dealing with this, generally good board layout, you keep your traces a certain distance apart and use certain thicknesses of PCB, and from what I can gather, it's about having ground planes in between these things to try and isolate and carry capacitance, if you like, straight to ground. So I mean, maybe a bypass cap would do the trick. That I can see. I have taken the 138 one here apart, and I have seen that they have used bypass caps in a couple of places. I think there's one on the VROM board, the top board, the program board, where it contains the VROMs. There's a trace on there. I think it's the clock, the 68,000 clock runs in parallel to some of the upper prog lines, and they've done that. They've done exactly that. Use bypass caps, 47 picofarad on either 2, 3 or 4. I forget which, because it varies from cart to cart. I think the 120-in-one's got a cap on there as well. But so you can see they've had to do that there, probably for that reason. I think something similar needs doing to the PCM bus. Like I said, I did try some 47 picofarad bypass caps on the PCM bus yesterday. I didn't do all of it. I did it in blocks of like 4 or 5 pins at a time, and just retested each stage, and it was still doing it. But it may well need one somewhere else. I don't know. I'm even wondering if the Z80 is the issue here. I don't know enough about MVS audio, the neo-geo audio, to understand. Why is it volume? Why is the volume level increasing just for the PCM track? Does the Z80 control the volume, or censor the Yamaha the volume at the certain samples should be played at any given moment? Does it control the volume in real time? I honestly don't know. I would suspect it's probably embedded as part of the PCM sample. So then you've got to say, is it the PCM sample? Are we getting a few bits here and there that are of an incorrect state? So therefore the volume level could either dip or it could raise, as it's doing here exponentially, double or treble or whatever it's doing. Is it the same? It's hard to say, I guess, unless you're looking at this on a logic analyzer or something and looking at the actual data, a good play versus a bad play, and trying to work out what's happened to do this. I'm in the dark, really. Is it a couple of bits? Is it certain bits in the data bus there that are flipping state? Are they consistently the ones that are flipping state, which is what's causing the volume adjustment? Or is it just a case of if you lose a few bits, if bits are incorrect in PCM data for the YM2610, is that sufficient to cause these weird things because the compression, doesn't work, the decompression doesn't work quite right when it's trying to play it? It loads that sample into a buffer, starts to play it, does some work on it or whatever, and if you've got a couple of corrupt bits in there because they've flipped state, or even one flipped bit, that this is what you get volume problems, because you kind of get those problems with corrupt VROMs in general, but it isn't the VROMs themselves, it's something on transit, from the VROMs through the CPLD and out to the bus. There's something somewhere there. Okay, so we've got Turf Masters in here. I'll just turn this up a tiny bit. Skip here, so you just start again, just leave it. Did it then. Did it then. And then. So you can hear what we're up against there. I mean, I had to, cut that quite significantly because I did have to do it 3 or 4 times, and each time it did do it, but the first 3 times really minor. That last time there, it did it a couple of more noticeable times towards the end. So Strikers it does it on. This game very minor there, just on that music. Strikers though, it's like it does it a fair bit on that background music there. And then 1 or 2 of the games that use PCM, it's a lot more rarer. I mean, for example, on the 138 you can get it on Metal Slug 5. You can get it on Metal Slug. You get it at the end of the first round of Metal Slug. The end of each wave. And it's on all of them, but it's so minor, most of the time you wouldn't notice it unless you're really listening. Right, after adding the 100 nanofarad caps to the to all the ROMs on the program board, and underneath the FPGAs, or CPLDs I should say, on the program board, you'll hear now, I cannot recreate this in the jukebox. This is the scenario I'm with the other carts, where they sound pretty good with the jukebox. You can't get them to, glitch. I must have listened to this about 50 times, and I've rebooted it, I've just tried it. Can't get it to glitch at all. So this is the other interesting aspect to this, that as you do some work there with adding bypass caps, you can fix it for the jukebox but not for the actual game. Yeah, I've listened to this over and over and over for about 20 minutes. I can't recreate it. But if I skip out of this from start of the game, it's difficult with this game to try and get that same soundtrack. Sometimes you have to reboot it because it doesn't always start. It starts with a random level, like that. Here we go. Hear that? This is something I've been looking at since about November 2013. Now, not constantly. I've not spent like masses and massive masses of time. I might have spent 20 or 30 or 40 hours in total over since that period of time, you know, a few hours here and there. Trying to look at the sound problem you get on these multicarts, specifically the, I can't get the words out, specifically the 138 one and the 120 one. Now the 120 one I got pretty early on. That was one of my first multicarts. I think I got the 161 in one first, but then I very quickly thereafter followed up with the 120 in one. And if you've got this game, you've got a 120 in one, you probably know what I'm talking about, because you get really, really crackly sound at random intervals. It's not consistent. You know, you can be playing this 1 minute for maybe 3 or 4 minutes and it can be fine. And suddenly you get a load of distorted, like crackly, really crackly, and a very loud volume level will change. Samples. So I surmised from this that it was, you know, there's a PCM issue here, because if you look at these carts in general, even without the bypass cap mods and things I've done, they're very stable. You know, you don't get code problems, these things don't crash, you don't get graphic issues. So it kind of stands to reason that, you know, if you start looking at that from, I guess, logically, it stands to reason that it can't be the MV prom chips, it can't be dodgy, corrupt images in the software, you know, in the actual ROM image. If we had corrupt VROMs, what you would expect, or certainly what I would expect anyway, is a consistent, distorted sound at specific points when those sounds and samples play. But that isn't what we've been seeing from day one with this, and that's why it's kind of been niggling in my mind, and I haven't been able to just let this go when, you know, there's something sort of, there's a sort of a clue there, sort of in the air. That's what's been the issue. There's been that clue, and it's been bugging me since 2013. Thinking, you know, there's something there. There's a fault. There's something there. I need to find the solution to this. This is not just accept, you know, that it's a crappy cart and there's nothing we can do with it kind of thing. These carts are crap, which seems to be the general consensus with these. Well, that's how I can conclusively say now that the crackly sound you get on these 120 and ones, 138 ones, there is a solution to it. It's not just you've got to live with the thing. I'll show you exactly what was required in a minute and run through some of the previous fixes as well, just quickly. I'm sorry I'll be going over it again if you've already seen them. Right, so here we go. It's not looking the cleanest, this board at the moment, I have to admit. I mean, the top board's looking a lot better than the graphics board, you know, the prog board that is looking better than the character board, because the character board's still got all the flux on from when it was originally manufactured. So I guess we'll start with the top board. This is the board that I've had to do the latest fix to that makes this now perfect. Basically, there are no issues as far as I can gather with this board other than the images of the MV proms, you know. So if you've still got a sound issue in one particular game after doing this, it's going to be one of these chips. There's nothing you can do about it other than reflow it. If it still doesn't work after reflowing it, then you need a programmer that will read one of these, I think the 70 pin, aren't they? They're like MSP 55 LV 100s or something. Yeah, they are. That's exactly what they are. So, and it's worth pointing out, actually, if you know of a cheap, you know, sort of affordable, you know, $200 or $300 programmer that will read these, please post in the comments. I would love to buy something that will do one of these, because I can dump all of these, we can analyse them, scan them against known ROMs, work out where ROMs start and end in terms of, you know, the arrangement there. I mean, they're going to be in blocks of like 512 KB or something. That's going to be the logical, you know, it's not going to be hard to find the boundaries between different games, I guess. Once you work out where it starts, there might be, I don't know, there might be some storage or something in there for something else lower down, like the P1, the initial P1 menu might be quite small. I honestly don't know. But the bottom line is, if we can if we can read these and program them, we can put anything on these effectively. You know, create our own. I mean, it'd be a pain in the arse because you'd have to desolder every single one of those and every single one of the chips on there, and then put them all back on again after you program them. So yeah, I really wouldn't like to do it, but I would do it anyway. I just certainly would do it. I would certainly take one of these and swap out all the dodgy hacked versions, the corrupt versions, you know, etc., with games that I actually want. Anyway, I'm digressing. So yeah, CPLD, not an FPGA. They do use CPLDs on these. So I'm going to cover what I've done to this first, just for people who haven't seen this before. The first thing is, order yourself some 806 size 100 nanofarad surface mounted capacitors, and fit any of the ones on here that are not fitted. So in my case, I think there was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there were like 6 or 7 that I had to fit here. The other thing is, on this, I think this is the 1381 board, C21 there, you'll find it's black. If you look at it, it's a black component, and it says on it 221. It's a resistor. That's a mistake, and it's on the 120-in-1s and the 138-in-1s. I've had to, on all 4 of my boards, I've had to remove the resistor from a bypass cap position, and I did double check this. It is nothing but a bypass cap. It goes between ground and the 3.3 volt rail. So the top half of that resistor, there's 3.3 volt, and the bottom half is ground. So some muppet, when they've designed this, or they put the components in the component reels in the factory or something, has decided that it needs a resistor there for God only why. I haven't got a clue. You explain to me. If you know why someone would put a resistor on a bypass cap spot, please let me know, because that has been bugging me as well, trying to make sense of why would you do that, and I can't think of any other reason than it's just a stupid fuck up, basically. So yeah, swap out C21, and I think on the 121 board it's in the same position. You'll see it again if you look. They'll all be like, the 1 or 2 that are there beige, apart from the resistor that's black, that's up here, and I think it's in position C5. I think it is on a 120-in-1 board. So that's that. The other thing you want to do is any of these other bypass cap spots, you know, if you've got 2 little pads there that have got C next to it, any of these ones around here, and again, put 100 nanofarad capacitor into those. Now, as you can see, I've got an electrolytic down here. I've put 220 microfarad. Really, 47 microfarads is probably sufficient. So it's all about physical size. You know, if you can fit, if you've got a 220, it'll fit onto there. Great, stick it on there. Sorry, I'm starting to get very nasally at the moment. I think I'm coming down with a cold again. Sorry, I had to stop for a sneeze there for a minute. The voltage regulator is optional. You don't really desperately need a voltage regulator, but as I said previously, if you don't, you're over voltaging these MV prom chips and your CPLD, because this is 3.3 volt logic. I think that's 5 volt logic there, but the other chips, they're all 3.3 volt logic, and without just using the 2 diodes as default on here, what you do with each diode, you're dropping the voltage by 0.7 volts. So you know, you take 5 volts, take off 0.7 times 2, what's that, 1.4, what's that giving you, 3.6 or something, I think, is that right? Yeah, I think it is. My maths ain't that great. So if you're over voltaging these logic chips by 0.3 of a volt, which percentage wise is quite a lot versus 3.3 volts, I don't know, several percent in it at least. So that's well worth doing, because all you've got to do is remove the 2 diodes and just solder the you know, the SMD part into there. Like, and that, I've used an AMS 1117, so those are really cheap. Like, you can get them for 10 pence each or something. You might be able to buy one on eBay at rip-off prices of maybe 99 pence for a pack of 10 or something like that. So they are pretty cheap, so it's well worth doing that. What else? So then you can see I've got this cap here. Now this was an experiment. I don't think this is really needed. I've left it there for the moment anyway, but it's not on the other 3 carts and they all work fine, so I would say that that's not needed. And all that's doing is a bypass cap, 47 picofarad to one of the clock pins, I think, that come in here. I think it's I think there's an 8 megahertz clock or a 4 megahertz clock, and that's all that was doing. So you can rule that out, because I haven't got it on the other 3 carts and they all work. So I would suggest that maybe if you're getting problems with crashes and things, you might want to consider adding that on, but in this instance, you know, it's not required to get these things working really well. So the cap that I had last night, the final one, and you know, there's no easy place to put this really on this cart. You can see what I've had to do here is scratch just near the via, that via there, there's 2, and this is actually the 10th pin to the right, I think. If we just go count across, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's actually the 14th pin to the right. I think it's like 10 from here or something. So, and if you look, it's like kind of bang in the middle. These ones here, if you look, you've got A50 and A45, so there's like 1, so it's 2. Yeah, it's the second from the right of A45, and it's 1, 2, 3 from A50. Yeah, you want to just scratch a tiny bit of the trace off and around on that via, solder from it, and then the other side of your 47 picofarad cap wants to go to the nearest ground, and the easiest place on these 1381s is just there. It's just not nearby. So same thing, scratched a bit of the silk screen off here, put a bit of flux on it, and I've soldered that on. So, and you can see, you know, it's a bit of a mess, this particular board, because you can see I've been scratching traces off here where I've tried various bypass caps and been trying to take readings and things, and so it's a bit of a work in progress, this, to a degree. It's not the best way of doing this, you know. A tidier way is perhaps to get one of these 806 type SMD components, and you could actually solder, you know, the one pin and just have it hanging across with the traces there, and use a little white, like a piece of cane or something to fly off the other side somewhere. That might be a better way, but it's not going to get caught on anything. It's not going to fall off. So whilst it looks a bit of a mess, this board as it is, I mean, it's a lot cleaner than it was because I've cleaned off most of the flux. There's just some offshoots at the top and bottom of these chips that I haven't cleaned yet. Yeah, anyway, the main thing is it's working. And then I've got a couple of caps here. One of them, I can't remember which one it is now. Let me just have a look at this diagram. Hang on a sec. Apologies for this slight delay. Yeah, if I look at this one here, it's coming down to A55, and A55 is SDRMPX. This was the one I was speculating that I needed to add one on anyway, so I've done that this morning. And I mean, the cart's just the same. It works just the same. It worked fine without it. But I'll show you why. Because there's two of these, depending on whether you're using PCM, ADPCM A or ADPCM B. So yeah, I figured that this was the one that made the problem with go away with Strikers and Pulstar and various other games. But then I started looking at the specs there and how that pin is used, and it suddenly dawned on me. I thought, well, actually, I've done this for one of these buses. Well, one method here. Let's do it for the other, because there could be an issue with the other bus. I think you've got like a ADPCM B and ADPCM A. I think they use the same connections and things, but they just work a different way. One of them runs at a faster clock speed. I think the other one runs, I get versus a 4 megahertz clock, and the other one runs versus a 666 kilohertz clock. So the faster one was the problem, the 4 megahertz, which kind of stands to reason, really. It's the faster stuff where you're going to start getting capacitance, parasitic capacitance and things like that going on. So you can see what I've had to do with that one there is, you know, scratch the trace. I guess I could follow it all the way up to where it goes here in the CPLD and solder onto the CPLD, but I mean, look how fine pitched those are. You're more likely to have a problem trying to solder on there than you are onto scratching the solder mask off one single trace and just trying to make a tiny little solder point connection there with a bit of flux and some solder. So it's not particularly elegant, but that's what's required. And then the final one here was just the trace that runs in parallel next to that SDRMPX trace. So A55 is the one, you know, I've just previously talked about a second ago. Well, it's the one next to it that I've bypassed as well, which is the SDROE, which I think is the right read output enable. The Yamaha sets that at various points when it's trying to read the I think it's the ADPCM A bus. So that's not required. I can remove that. I'm going to remove that in a minute, actually. So yeah, all will become clear, hopefully, if I show you on the diagram. If you're going to try this yourself, and it is easier to do this on the 120-in-1, and I'll tell you why. Because one thing I noticed after I got it working on the 138-in-1, on the 120-in-1, I think there is a point for a capacitor to fix. I think both of these, actually. I think there's, sorry, not both of these. Those two. There's two positions here on the 120-in-1 already for them. So that was the final thing with that, you know. I thought there were configuration points, and I'll tell you why. Because I tried a 100 nanofarad cap on one of those to start with on the 121, and I got no sound, so I removed the caps and never thought about it at all until I revisited this last night and fixed it on here. Went back to the 121 and thought, oh god, that's what those cap positions are for. So there we go, that's what they are. So if I look at the cartridge pin out here now, hopefully this will start to make a bit of sense. Can you see that? Yeah, so that's the one I fixed. I did a bypass cap 2 last night, 47 picofarad, SDPMPX. Yeah, can you see it? I'll just put my nail on top of it there, so it's that one. And then the other one is that one, SDRMPX. Sorry, just off a little bit there, aren't we? So you got one there, and you got one there, and this is the prog top. This is the top board of your prog cart. So as you put it, you know, sort of like that, you know, you can the top board here. For the 138-1, that's the prog board. Well, you can tell you've got it says V. You've got the V chips at the top here, V, and then you've got P along this side here. So that's what you need: a 47 picofarad cap from each of those 2 pins to ground, and that's what you're doing. You're bypassing straight to ground. I found this later on, and this is what helped me make sense of this all, really. It kind of clarifies things, and well, I don't know exactly I can't see exactly what's going on. What it allows me to do is it fits in with my speculation, if you like. I came to the conclusion there was some sort of timing thing going on here that was very, very rare. It was very irregular. It was very infrequent and random. So I do think if you look at this, you know, you've got this 4 megahertz clock. You've got your SDPMPX, and this is the one that I fixed first. This is the one that fixed the problems with strikers and Pulstar and various other things. And it talks about the sequence of events here, of what, you know, what these happens with the trailing and leading edges of these various clock signals and things. With regards to accessing the, you know, the PCMA, ADPCMA and ADPCM ROMs. So where am I looking now? I can't remember. Yeah, so you've got this, let's say, 4 megahertz clock, and that particular pin is set by the YM2610 at various points when it wants to access the bus, effectively. You know, it's wanting to read. You can see here, you know, it ties in with, you've got a time value here associated with the addressing, and then in 2 sections because it's multiplexed, and then a time associated with accessing the data. So it kind of makes a little sense, really, if you think about it like that, that if there was a timing issue there, if you're getting some noise on this SDPMPX pin, just, you know, a glitch or something there from parasitic capacitance, or just because it's old technology, it's old 5-volt TTL stuff. And it's worth pointing that out, actually, that some of this older stuff can generate really unclean signals and things. You can look at things on the scope and stuff, and you can see little spikes and little bits of noise and stuff. And standard TTL, you know, the old 5-volt logic, seems to be pretty hardy and resistant to that stuff. And it's like, it doesn't cause any issues. But as soon as you start sticking 3-volt, modern 3.3 volt logic in there, and even modern 5-volt logic in there, sometimes those little bits of noise and stuff cause big problems, and I think that's probably what's going on here. Like I say, it could be sort of parasitic capacitance or something from a nearby trace, from the output enable pin or something, I don't know. But anyway, so that is it in a nutshell. I think we have this, like I say, very infrequently we're getting this where it's tripping. The CPLD is, the timing of the CPLD is not quite right. It's out by 1 bit or something, which is enough to shift all the bits, which gives you a volume increase, for a very short period of time, until it reads the next block of data or something, or the next sample and stuff, and corrects itself. So this hasn't been one of my better videos, really. I've rambled on, I haven't been able to keep my thought train here. I think I've been jumping around a fair bit. But at least we've covered what you need to do on this top board here. I don't think there was anything else, really. I've mentioned the resistor, swap out all these caps, 806s I think I used, 806 size, 100 nanofarads. Electrolytic, you don't need both of these. I've ended up with more things on here than I actually need. I could start removing some of these and tidying this up now, but you do need at least one electrolytic on this side of this you know, here in C12, isn't that? It's on the 5 volt line effectively, and it pays, you know, what I've got here is one on the 5 volt line and one on the 3.3 volt line, you know, on the output, one on the input, one on the output. You should always have a smaller one on the output than you've got on the input with these voltage regulators. They don't like it when you do them the other way around. It can actually damage the regulator actually as the thing powers off. So it's just, it probably wouldn't, but it's good practice to do that. I don't think there's anything else on that board. So on this board you can see the modifications I did here. It was a similar story. Any of the positions up here where you've got a cap missing, you know, there's a space there and these PC slots, stick 100 nanofarad 80806 cap in there. I think those were both on the board, so that was okay. But you can see one other thing I did here is I added another 100 nanofarad bypass cap myself to the M1 and the S1. So yeah, these are just these ceramic ones. But what you can do with these is the 3.3 volt line on these chips, as the board is there now, and it's exactly the same on the 120 in one. It's this. If you count the top 3 pins there, you are able to join the one side of the cap to any of those 3 pins, and it doesn't matter if you join all 3 pins together. So it's quite easy to solder on there. Just be careful you don't solder like that to the 4th pin or whatever, because then you'll have a problem. But all 3 of the top pins are all power pins, you know, the power input VCC, and it's the same on this one here. Again, it's the top 3 pins, and they're just going across to the common ground that's easily available on the bottom of that SMD cap there. So again, 100 nanofarads, and that's all we're doing. We're replicating what these are. That's exactly what these caps are doing here. They're going from the 3.3 volt to ground. That's exactly what the 2 contacts on each side are, from 3.3 to ground, and that's all we've done with this, is 3.3 to ground, 100 nanofarads. The other thing I've done on here that's different from a previous video, I need to put some heat shrink tubing over this really to isolate it. I'll perhaps do that later, but you can see I've put a dedicated 3.3 volt regulator on here as well. This was not required, so you can see where I've done it. I've mounted it on the position of the diode there using where the tab is. The tab gives you 3.3 volt out. It's to the output of that diode where that normally goes. Obviously I've removed the diodes, and then I've scratched off the silk screen there at the bottom for where the bottom connection is soldered straight onto the ground, the ground point here, and then the right hand pin there where my nail is obviously is the 5 volts coming in, so I've got a very short wire there, and you know, it's not very clean. I could tidy that up. These are all fudge fixes really that I've just thrown in really quickly while I've been trying different things, testing things, ruling things out, etc, etc. But you could just join, you know, you can have a wire, as I showed in the previous video, a wire from, you know, the position where this voltage regulator is going here to the 3.3 volt line on here somewhere, either on your regulator straight to the tab or on there, or 3.3 volt on here. You know, you can test continuity on your meter. There's different ways of doing it, and you can join them up like that. You know, I had them joined with a wire like that, but the way this is now, you know, each board has got its own regulator, and it makes no difference. They both run just the same with or without separate regulators, but it's better than diodes, that's for damn sure. And with regards to that cap, yeah, all I did is, as I said in the previous video, you know, a separate reservoir cap on here as well, on the 3.3 volt line, so it's got its own local reservoir. But again, it's not absolutely required. You could probably manage with one 47 microfarad cap on here, perhaps in each position. You probably certainly need one on here, I think, because that's on the output side of the regulator. But yeah, there's not much more to say on this really, other than if you've still got problems with one of these, you know, you need to reflow the CPLD or reflow. Start with the MV ROM chips because they're the easy ones to do, and then the very worst case scenario, you're still not getting any life out of your car, or you know, it's crashing a hell of a lot or something, you know, whatever weird behaviour you're getting that's not being fixed by adding all these bypass caps, then your last resort is to reflow the CPLD, and if it still doesn't work, you're looking either at faulty chips, you know, or the images on the chips themselves. Anyway, not much more to say, I don't think. I will post sort of the details in the description for this, of components and things you need, you know, the sizes, where to mount them on the board. I might even take some close-ups of these and just upload the photos and circle a few things so you can, in fact I will do that, just mark them on the diagram there so you can see, you can print them off and you can see exactly where you need to scratch, trace and put a component, etc, etc, etc. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.